All right, I want to pose a question. What if one of the biggest, baddest villains in all of economics, the monopoly, isn't a villain at all? What if it's actually secretly a hero? Today, we are diving into a really powerful and, yeah, pretty controversial defense of monopoly. Monopoly, just say the word. It kind of feels heavy, right? It has all these negative feelings attached to it. We immediately picture some corporate behemoth just crushing the little guy, leaving us, the consumers, with zero choice. But what if that's not the whole picture? So before we get into challenging all of the conventional wisdom, let's just do a quick recap. This is the standard playbook, right? This is what we all know about monopolies. And yeah, this is the classic argument against them. You've heard it a million times. If there's no competition, a monopoly can just crank up prices, let quality slip. I mean, why bother improving if you're the only game in town? This is the fear that pretty much drives our entire economic policy around monopolies. And look, this isn't just a gut feeling people have. This view is literally the foundation of antitrust law. It's what's taught in Econ 101. The whole thing is built on this idea that perfect competition is the absolute ideal, the gold standard for an economy. But here's the twist. Here's where it gets interesting. What if this entire way of looking at it is focused on the wrong thing? What if, by making the result, the monopoly, the bad guy, we're actually choking off the very engine that drives all of human progress? And that brings us to this contrarian view, an idea championed by economists like Richard McKenzie and Dwight Lee. Their whole argument is that the pursuit of a monopoly isn't the problem at all, it's the solution. It is the engine of progress. This quote right here gets to the absolute heart of it. The most important word is prospect. It's not about defending monopolies that have been around for 50 years. It's about the chance, the potential to become one. That potential, that prize at the end of the rainbow, is what gives companies the guts to take massive, expensive, and frankly, kind of crazy risks. Now, this is all based on a concept called dynamic efficiency. It sounds a little academic, but the idea is simple. Instead of just focusing on making the stuff we already have as cheap as possible right now, dynamic efficiency is all about creating brand new, way better things for the future. It's the difference between getting a cheaper flip phone and inventing the iPhone. Okay, so how does this actually play out in the real world? Well, let's look at one of the highest stakes games there is, the pharmaceutical industry. This is the perfect example of the innovator's gamble. Take a good look at this number, $800 million. A study from Tufts University found that's the average cost to develop one single new drug. That is a gigantic, high-risk bet that a company makes years, sometimes decades, before they ever see a dime in return. And it's not just the money, it's the time. As you can see here, you're looking at more than a decade from the moment of discovery to a drug actually hitting pharmacy shelves. And the chance of failure at every single one of these stages, it's astronomically high. This cycle here shows you exactly how it has to work. You start with this huge pile of cash and a long, long period of risk. If, and that's a big if, you succeed and have a breakthrough, you get a short period of market leadership, a temporary monopoly usually protected by a patent. It's the profits you make here that are absolutely essential to pay back that first gamble, and this is crucial to fund the next one. The source material has this perfect analogy for it. R&D is like drilling for oil. You're going to have a ton of really expensive failures, what they call dry holes. The only reason you'd ever take that risk is the hope, the prospect of hitting one massive gusher that pays for all the failures and then some. You take away the chance of the gusher, and guess what? Nobody drills for oil. So this brings us to the real heart of the conflict, right? It's this fundamental trade-off we have to think about. It's a choice between two totally different economic priorities. So we're really left with these two different worlds. On one side, you have the world that wants what economists call static efficiency. Just make the stuff we already have as cheap as possible today. On the other side, you have a world that wants dynamic efficiency, creating incentives for those risky moonshot innovations for tomorrow. The argument here is you just can't have the best of both worlds at the same time. And this chart just lays out the cold, hard economic reality of innovation. It costs $800 million to create something new, but only a tiny, tiny fraction of that to just copy it. If you don't have some kind of temporary protection, like a patent, the innovator could never make their money back. And if that's the case, nobody would take that first massive risk. We just wouldn't get the new drugs, period. This is such a critical idea to grasp. This argument is not anti-competition. Not at all. In fact, It's redefining what real competition even is. It's not about two soda companies trying to sell their drink for 5 cents less. It's about the brutal, all-out race to create something that has never existed before. To invent the next iPhone, the next life-saving medicine, the next Google. That is the competition that actually pushes society forward. So where does all this leave us? Well, this argument completely reframes how we should look at a monopoly. It's no longer a market failure. It's a necessary prize. Okay, so let's just pull all the key takeaways together. The big idea is that the prospect, the chance of becoming a monopoly is the fuel for real innovation. Those huge profits aren't just corporate greed. They're the necessary reward for taking on enormous risk. And that forces all of us to face a tough trade-off. Do we want the absolute lowest prices today, or do we want the biggest breakthroughs for tomorrow? At the end of the day, this perspective suggests that just slapping an evil label on monopolies is way too simple. The real conversation is about our priorities. It's a really complex balancing act between what we can afford in the present and the kind of innovation we want for our future. And that leaves us with this one fundamental question. When a company hits it big with a brand new invention, is that a market failure that we need to rush in and fix? Or is that the prize, the very prize that's going to fund the next big thing? It really all comes down to this. What are we willing to pay for the future?